Hi everybody! In this video I'm going to be showing you how to sew a t-shirt. Specifically, this t-shirt I'm going to be demonstrating with is just a boxy loose fit tee without a set-in sleeve, and it just has a neckband, a sleeve band, and down here there is a split hem. If you want to just see how the split hem is done, then go to this timestamp. If you want to see the whole thing, then just stick around. For this t-shirt, you're going to want to use a knit fabric, and this one is a bamboo rayon, so it has a really nice drape. To do this tutorial, you can use a sewing machine for the whole process, but I'm also going to be demonstrating with my serger. And on either machine that you sew with, you're going to be needing to use a jersey ballpoint needle so that the needle goes through the fabric instead of with a sharp needle, it puncturing holes in it. So just make sure that you switch your needles before you begin sewing. Let's get into the tutorial where I show you how to draft and prepare everything to begin sewing. Fold your t-shirt in half and lay it out as smooth as possible, and then you're going to mark all of the points that will help you in drafting the shirt. So that will be anywhere that it meets up with the band and any curves under the arms and the bottom of the hems. And then you will connect all of those points with a ruler. And if you want the hem to be a different length in the front and the back, then just make sure that you have two different lines. And then you can draw curves along the necklines and one long straight line for the center fold line. At this point, I just double checked to make sure everything landed where I wanted it, and then I decided to scoop the neckline outward a little bit. And you can just adjust it with a curved ruler. So after I've finalized the shape of the t-shirt, I'm going to add in the seam allowance around the entire thing except for this side. This is going to be the fold. So no seam allowance is needed here, and once you've got your seam allowance, then you can cut out the paper for your pattern. And you can see that right here on my pattern is cut, and the reason I do this is because I want both my back and front pieces to be one piece. But when I'm cutting out the front, all I do is I cut this almost to the end, and then on that little line I fold it and it's out of the way. And then I do the same thing to the bottom. I just fold along to hide the back extension, and I can just cut out the front, and then when I want to cut out the back, I just pop those back pieces out, but they all stay together in one piece. So now I'm just going to put this along the fold, and I'm going to cut out a front and a back piece. So now I've got the back piece, the front piece, and the neckband pieces cut out. And when you cut out the shirt pieces, the knit is going to be going lengthwise of the shirt. This is the shoulder, so it'll go this way. And then on the neckband pieces, the knit is going to be going this way, so on the short side. So once you have these pieces cut out, then you can just get a little scrap piece, and I'm going to be using my serger, but if you're using a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, you're just going to want to do a little test swatch. And so I'm going to be predominantly using my serger, and so I just ran it through. And at first it was kind of rippling a little bit, and so I needed to adjust my tension just to make sure that it comes out nice and smooth. So once you have everything set with your sewing machine, you are ready to begin. Now you're going to lay out the t-shirt with the right sides together, the right sides of the knit, and you're going to line them up at the shoulders and use ballpoint pins to just pin along to prepare for sewing. You can either serge these seams, or you can use a sewing machine and do a stretch stitch, like a zigzag stitch or a lightning bolt stitch. Use whatever you have. and just sew at whatever seam allowance you put in, which in this case I'm going to be sewing at 1/2 inch. So from the underarm down to where I want the split hem to open up, I'm going to just pin along here, and where I want the very top of the split hem to be, I'm going to mark with a pin, and I'm just going to measure how far I want it to be, and then I'm going to measure 1 inch up from that. And so I did everything the same on this side, and then between these 2 pins, I just went to my sewing machine and did a straight line of lightning bolt stitches between the 2 pins. Now I'm going to take this over to my serger, which you can do on the sewing machine as well, and I'm going to stitch down from the underarm, and once I get to this first pin, I'm going to be stitching, and I'm going to hit that line of stitches, and then I'm just going to quickly curve off before about halfway between these 2 pins, and that's what it looks like. So once I got to that stitching, I just stitched off to the side, and then now with this split hem, I'm going to take it and I'm going to just serge straight along the entirety of this. And that's what it will look like when it's serged. And this is going to be eventually pushed back and stitched down to the side like this, but first we're going to need to do our hem before we do that. So just do this same process to the other side, and we'll move on to the next step. I went ahead and serged the bottom of each side, the front and the back, to prepare for hemming, and then fold it over however big I want my seam to be, and then you're just going to hem it however you'd like. Make sure that you turn it to the wrong side. Okay, so now that I've stitched this down, the only thing left to do for the hem is to just stitch this split hem down. So I've already pressed these pieces back 1/2 inch on both sides. And what I'm going to do is this part is going to be kind of folded down into a sort of a triangle, and you're just going to stitch across here, and it's just going to be like a little rectangle. From the outside, you'll just be going up and you'll square the stitches and go back down the other side. Okay, so once you've stitched around this split hem, then the bottom is done and we're ready to move on to finishing the neck opening and the sleeve openings. So what you're going to do is you're just going to lay this down flat and smooth and measure the opening. So it's a 6-inch opening, and you're just going to double it, and then I'm going to add 1/2 inch just because I want the piece that I'm going to put in, I want it to be just barely smaller than the actual opening. And so adding that 1/2 inch is just going to give a tiny bit of seam allowance extra, but it will still end up being just barely smaller than the arm opening. So you're just going to measure the amount that you need for the sleeve band, and you'll make 2 of these. Now with right sides together, match up the ends and stitch along this seam. Now once you have that stitched, you're just going to fold it with the wrong sides touching. So the right side is facing out. You'll just fold it directly in half, and then you're going to insert the sleeve into this opening, and you're going to start by matching up this seam with the seam in the armpit with the raw sides touching. The band should be touching the right side, and just pin that in place. And then you're going to just stretch everything out to where it's evenly dispersed and pin at the shoulder, and just place a few pins around the sleeve opening. So just finish pinning, and then you're going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So here's what that looks like when it's all sewn, and you can just take your threads and tuck them in, and this is what it looks like from the right side. And then repeat the same thing to the other side. Now for the V-neck, we are going to be measuring around the border of this neck opening. And then you're going to take 90% of that measurement. You'll cut out a strip for the neckband according to that measurement. And now you're going to put the right sides together and put the raw edges on the side together. And then you're going to stitch a V going to the center point and back out. Once you've sewn that little V, you can cut out all of the excess and then cut a little notch right in the center of that V. And then when you turn it to fold it with the right sides facing out, you'll have a V. And then you're going to take this over to the iron and just press these seams open and flat all the way around. Now after the neckline is pressed and ready, you're just going to baste right inside of the seam allowance on the V, and then you're going to do the same thing just right here on the V of the neck and do a little clip right in the center. So with the center of the V, you're going to, after it's been basted, you're going to get the center and you're going to put the right side of the fabric toward you. And then you're going to get the neckband, and the center point where the basting is on each of them, you're going to match up and pin that into place. And then you're going to match this basting line and this basting line together. And you can just pin slightly away from the center, and then you'll go to the other side. So once you have this pinned, you can go to the sewing machine with this side facing toward you, and you're just going to stitch along this basting line just on the V, and make sure that none of these folds are sewn. Okay, once you have stitched the V portion of the neckband onto the neck opening, now you can evenly disperse the rest of the neckband throughout the neck opening. So you're just going to find the center of the back, just like this, and put a little marker pin, and then find the center back, and then just make sure that nothing gets twisted. The raw edge is going to be met at the raw edge, and then you can pin the center back. And then what you're going to have, it's going to look kind of like this. The neckband is going to be smaller than the neck opening, which is what it's supposed to be, and you're just going to stretch it into place and evenly distribute the neckband along the neck opening. And then once you have everything pinned and it's dispersed to your liking, then you can stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. And once you have stitched all the way around, give it a press with an iron so it's nice and flat and smooth. Okay, so now that you've ironed the neckline, the shirt is finished and you can just enjoy the product of your work. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, you can subscribe and click the little bell alert to be notified anytime that I post a video. Until next time, go get creative and make a t-shirt that you love. And by the way, you can help me to teach more people how to sew by sharing this video. Thank you so much for your support and participation. See you soon.